Hello and welcome back to the channel, fam. I am your host, Vortex from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And we just wanted to start off by saying thanks again so much, everybody, for joining us. Because we're back at it again, continuing our series on apps that can help you find some songwriting shortcuts. Now, this is our fourth video in this series, so make sure to check out our previous 3 videos where we covered chords, melodies, and bass lines. And of course, also make sure to smash the thumbs up and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. And don't forget to comment down below if we forgot any of the apps that you guys use to help you create arpeggios. So if you find yourself kind of stressed out in these crazy times, or just experiencing beat block and need some inspiration, we really do think that these apps might be able to help. So let's start playing and jump right into the 4th video in this series of songwriting shortcut apps, Arpeggios. Alright, and the first app we'll be talking about today is Ioniarics by Pagefall Limited, available for $6.99. Ioniarics is a polyrhythmic arpeggiator that makes it really easy to set up complex rhythmic patterns and use them to generate interesting sequences. So as you can see, we have both the plugin pulled up here and the native synthesizer to Cubasis 3 pulled up here using the EDM Stab synth. Let's just hear what that sounds like real quick. Okay, now there's actually a bunch of different controls on this app, but we're only going to be focusing on a few here to keep this video short and simple. So first, I'd like to draw your attention over here to these lines. These are actually going to be functioning as steps in this arpeggiator. You can see that we have 2 circles of steps here. We have a circle of steps inside, and then a circle of steps outside of that. In the app, those are separated as A and B. You can see that we can increase those steps right here with A, and we can decrease them as well. And then we can go to B and we can increase those steps and decrease those steps as well. So the inner circle here is B and the outer circle is A. And below that we have the length of the sequence. So if we set this to 1 here, it'll go pretty fast. If we set this to 4, that'll be 1 bar. And you can actually even adjust the A and B rotations on where they sit. So if we start messing with this, you can see we can move it around. Actually, let's go ahead and add a couple more notes and a couple more steps so you guys can see this. What we'll do is we'll move the A rotation like so, and we'll move the B rotation like so. So when you start moving these around and then increasing the steps, you can see that you can get some pretty unique sequences because each one of these steps will be a note that is hit. So let's go ahead and start playing with this. Now, as you can see, we currently have our notes to go both up and down, but you can choose down or just up or even a random. You can also set the notes to hold, or if you'd like to have the notes be toggled by on and off press. As you can see, this is a pretty unique way of creating arpeggios. Pagefall has a number of different MIDI apps like this, so I highly recommend you guys check them out. And the second app we'll be talking about today is StepPolyArp by Laurent Colson, available for $14.99. Now this app comes in standalone form that you can use with AudioBus or InterApp Audio, but they also have an identical AUV3 version that is sold as a separate app for the same price, and that's the one we'll be using today. StepPolyArp is a real-time polyphonic and polyrhythmic MIDI step arpeggiator and step sequencer. It can be used as a step arpeggiator by automatically generating melodic patterns from played notes or chords, or as a step sequencer that doesn't require MIDI input to play. Now, as you can see here, we do have the app pulled up in full screen. We can actually make this small if we'd like, or we'll pull this up larger. I think this makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see. Now, the user interface is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much a standard arpeggiator app, but what's really, really cool is the ability to generate random notes. But before we get to that, we'll just quickly show you around the interface. As you can see here, we have the sequencer where you can tap in notes one by one, or you can delete those by tapping on it and then clicking delete. We have the speed of our sequence here being set to a 16th note right now. You can adjust the velocity for any note here, and then here's where you can actually store your different sequences here at the bottom of the app. Let's just hold down a note now and see what we have. So as you can see, pretty standard sequence there, just 16th notes. So let's go up to the options button here. And as you can see in this menu, we have a couple of quick options such as every 2 steps, every 4 steps, or all steps. So this ends up being really handy if you just want a simple sequence, and for example, like a note on every other step. Or every 4 steps. Pretty simple there. And of course, you can even blank it out really simply by clicking the blank button. Now let's start generating some random sequences. You have the option here of generating either a mono or a poly sequence. So let's just for now generate some mono sequences. Let's press this button now. And we'll hold down some keys. Alright, let's go ahead and generate a poly sequence. Pretty cool. Let's generate a few more mono sequences. And of course, like any AUV3 app, you can also save and load presets. So here we have our presets menu in the top left-hand corner, which will bring up the presets dialog. And here you can go to user to save your own. But it does come with a few factory ones as well. Let's just play with a couple of these. Let's click on Action Bass. Let's try a live lead. How about a couple other ones real quick? How about bassy ARP? So that is pretty cool. It's very nice to have all of these presets here. As you can see, there's actually a bunch. If we scroll all the way down here, there looks like to be almost maybe 100 presets in here. So very, very nice to have when you're looking for inspiration for what to create. Okay, next up we have the Rozeta Sequencer Suite by Bam Bros, available for $9.99. Now, Rozeta is a suite of MIDI sequencers and controllers that lets you explore a new freedom approach to sequencing and controlling your mobile music apps. The app in this suite we'll be focusing on today, though, is just Rozeta Arpeggio, a MIDI arpeggiator offering latch mode, shuffle, and automatic tempo synchronization. Turn any incoming MIDI stream into an arpeggio on the fly. So we have the app pulled up here, and as you can see, there's really not much to it. There's only a couple of sections on a small part of the screen. As you can see, the app itself only takes up half of what is normally considered half screen. So there's really not a whole lot of controls here. So you can actually get started really quickly. Now, we have the init patch pulled up right now. And as you can see, just as soon as you start, just press a key. And you're you're already up and running very, very quickly with an arpeggio. Now, we have a bunch of different options here that we can choose from, but already you can see that we have something very usable and very workable right away. Now, let's start adjusting a couple of key things here. First is going to be the actual clock divider. Now, this is going to determine how fast your arpeggio actually goes. So let's try this right now. Let's move this down to 1 and then start playing. And we'll increase that. Next, of course, we have our octaves. By default, this is set to 1. And then the only really other cool thing to pay attention to when you're just trying to bring up an arpeggio pretty fast is the accent. So this is really cool. Right now, by default, it's set to 3, which means that every 3 notes will have a note that's actually pressed louder than the rest. So let's change that up a bit. For effect so you guys can hear this, let's start it at 1 and raise it up. So very cool to have that additional accent note right here for you so that you can adjust that really easily and quickly. You can actually adjust the accent velocity right here, right next to it, so you can make that note either louder or quieter. As you can see, by default, it's set to 120, so it is set to be louder than the rest of the notes. So let's go back to the init patch real quick and just play a little bit. Alright, very, very cool. As you can see, really, really easy to get up and going and get a new arpeggio very, very fast. Okay, next up today we have Riffer by Audio Modern for $6.99. Riffer is a creative MIDI sequencer that generates random patterns and melodies for you, designed to feed any synth, sampler, drum machine, or anything that accepts MIDI signal, both software and hardware. You can choose scales, complexity, steps, start and end points, playback motion, set pitch, transpose, and many, many more. This ends up being a great app for creating all sorts of different sequences, not just bass notes or not just melodies, not just arpeggios. You can really create anything on this app because you can fine-tune so many parameters. So we've actually used this in a few other videos as well, and we're going to use this app again today. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the quantization setting on the left-hand side. You can see that it is currently set to 1/16. You can change that by just tapping the 1/16 and changing that at any time. Below that, at the bottom, there is a couple settings, steps and loop, that we currently both have set to 16. And finally, the top right-hand corner is the number of notes that get generated in this sequence, and you can see we currently have it set to 8. We can change this again at any time, but we'll have that set to 8. We'll leave that set to 8 just like that. And those are some of the main bread and butter settings that will really affect your sound the most. Now, in addition to that, you can of course change the pitch range and which note that you're in. Currently you can see that we have it set between F2 and B1, but we can change that at any time by moving the slider there on the right hand side. We can move this up, all the way up, or all the way down. So let's just set this back to what it was. Now, as you can see, there are many additional settings in here like tie notes, sustain notes, and velocity and duration and so forth, but we're not going to cover all of that today, just simply using this app to create some arpeggios. So let's see what we have so far. Okay, now let's begin generating some more sequences. Okay, now we'll just change a couple of different settings to give you an idea of what that's going to sound like. So what we'll do is we'll up the number of notes to 16 and see what that sounds like. So as you can see, it will place a note in every one of the steps since we currently only have 16 steps available. And if you're not happy with these steps, of course, you can change this any time simply by dragging your finger across the sequencer to create just a steady flow of notes. And tap in your own notes at any time. So let's change this back to 8. Or actually, let's change this to 16 again, but we'll change this over here to the amount of steps to 32 steps. That way we'll get a much larger sequence created. But as you can see, this app, like other generative apps, works best when there is fewer notes. So we'll change this back to 16 notes possible, 16 steps possible, and we'll change this back to only 8 notes being generated. So as you can see, you don't get some perfect Grammy Award-winning melody every single time, but you can absolutely use this to experiment and draw inspiration from to be able to create new things that you might not have thought of otherwise. Alright, and the final app we'll be talking about today is ArpBud by Kem Oakley. ArpBud has 2 main sequencers. You can design your arpeggios by interval values in the interval sequencer, and you can drive your arpeggios with a pitch sequencer by applying the pitch to each interval value of the interval sequence. Every step of the pitch sequencer has its own interval sequencer, so you are free to work on single arpeggios as well as multiple arpeggios. Now, as you can see, we have the app pulled up here, and it's a pretty simple user interface. This app does not yet support AUV3, but it is an open source app, so you guys make sure to check that out if you are a developer. So as you can see, we do have the interval sequencer and the pitch sequencer. We're only going to actually get into the interval sequencer today. So that means we're just going to cover the top half of the app today. So here we have our notes. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 notes right now, but you can add or remove these at any time with these big plus or minus buttons, so we can add a new note. We'll add this up to 8 steps now. So now we have 8 steps available for our arpeggio sequence. And you'll notice these knobs down here. Each one of these dials here will actually affect what you have selected up here. So currently we have the semitone selected, so that means that all of these dials will affect the semitone. If we click on the volume, those will affect the volume, and the same will be for pitch bend, modulation, portamento, and gate time. So let's stick with semitone right now. So currently all of these 8 notes are set to on. You can turn those on or off quickly by just tapping them on or off. So let's just see what we have playing right now. So as you can see, all 8 of those notes are playing, and what they're actually playing is cubasis 2 in the background. You can see we have cubasis being played, the standard acoustic piano. So let's go back to ArpBud, and we can of course change the semitones, so let's go ahead and play with that. So as you can see, very simple to get going here, just a few taps and you've already got a sequence, and we can start changing things further with these buttons on the left. We can also do some pitch bending in here, so we can try it. We can click on pitch bend and try a few in here, see what this sounds like. So lots of different settings here that you can quickly mess with. Again, the modulation time, portamento, and gate time are all easy to mess with because of this exact same user interface where we just have these steps at the top and then these dials underneath it, which again allows you to really get up and running quickly with creating your arpeggiated sequences. Hello and welcome back, everybody. We really hope you learned something from those app demonstrations. We very much respect your time, so we actually do try to squeeze a lot of information into a little amount of time. And we do try to keep these videos between 10 and 20 minutes long. So if I end up talking too fast or we go too fast in a video, we just wanted to say really sorry about that. We are pretty passionate over here at Mobile Music Pro, so we do tend to get a little bit overexcited. But hey, smash those likes if you want us to keep going. It really does give us the oxygen in our lungs and the love we need to keep creating these videos. Now, this actual video in this particular series will actually likely be the final one for a little while we focus on new videos and new video series. We're always trying to think of, new stuff and new videos to come out with, and we do have a couple of things in the pipeline that we don't want to quite share fully yet, but the first one of those that we're thinking about doing is an app shootout or an app-like comparison video, where we can compare apps with similar functionality to each other, such as different EQ apps and different compressor apps. So make sure to stay tuned to all of our socials to see what's coming up next. Or you can just message us to say hi. We don't mind either way. So until next time, folks, keep talking music, and we'll see you later.